Your soul was contracted by the universe. That's why you keep seeing 1111, the moment you were found. You did not find this video. This video found you. And if you feel something stir inside you as you read those words, a quiet recognition, a subtle tightening in the chest, a sense that you have heard something like this before in a language you cannot quite name, then you already know that what is about to unfold here is not coincidence. Nothing about this moment is accidental. Not the time you are watching this, not the place you are in, not the season of your life that brought you here, not even the number you keep seeing every time you glance at a clock, a receipt, a license plate, a screen, the number that has become so persistent, so precise, so impossible to dismiss that you stopped calling it random a long time ago. 1111. You have seen it more times than you can count. And each time something happens inside you that is difficult to explain to anyone who has not experienced it themselves. A pause, a pull, a feeling that the universe just knocked on your door and waited to see if you would answer. Most people look away and move on with their day. But you stopped. You noticed. And that noticing, that simple, profound act of paying attention, is itself a sign of something the universe has been trying to tell you for longer than you realize. What if 1111 is not a symbol of good luck, not a coincidence, not a trick of the mind, but a signal, precise, intentional, and deeply personal, sent specifically to souls like yours at exactly the moment they are ready to receive what it carries? What if the universe has been speaking to you all along, and 1111 is simply the frequency at which your soul is best able to hear it? This video will take you somewhere most conversations about signs and synchronicities never dare to go. Not into superstition, not into passive wishful thinking, but into something ancient, something honest, and something that will fundamentally alter the way you understand your own life. The pain in it, the beauty in it, the losses, the unexpected turns, the moments of inexplicable grace, and the moments of darkness so deep you were not sure you would find your way back. Because here is the truth this video is built around, and it is not a comfortable truth, but it is a liberating one. Before you arrived in this body, before you drew your first breath, before any of the circumstances of your current life existed, your soul made an agreement, a contract. Not with a distant, indifferent cosmos, but with an intelligence so vast and so loving that it designed every detail of your journey with a precision your human mind cannot yet fully comprehend. Every wound, every gift, every person who stayed, and every person who left. Every door that opened, and every door that refused to. Every breakdown, every breakthrough. Every moment when you looked up at a clock at exactly 1111 and felt your heart do something your vocabulary does not have a word for yet. All of it was written. All of it was agreed upon. All of it is, and has always been, on purpose. You were contracted by the universe, and the proof has been appearing to you, quietly and persistently, every time you see those 4 numbers aligned like a gateway in the middle of your ordinary day. Stay with this. What is about to be revealed was always meant for you. Before you were born, the architecture of the soul contract. There is a moment, before the first heartbeat, before the first breath, before the body even fully forms, a moment that exists outside of time as you understand it, in which the soul stands at the threshold between the unseen world and the world of matter, and it makes a choice. Not a simple choice, not a casual one, but a deeply considered, fully conscious agreement between the soul and the intelligence of the universe, a contract in the truest and most sacred sense of the word, not written in ink, not signed with a name, but woven into the very architecture of the soul itself, encoded in its frequency, embedded in its design, so that every step it takes in the physical world will be guided, sometimes gently, sometimes dramatically, back toward the path it agreed to walk. This concept is not new. It appears in the wisdom traditions of cultures that had no contact with one another, in the mystical teachings of the Kabbalah, in the Hermetic philosophy of ancient Egypt, in the Vedic understanding of karma and dharma, in the accounts of those who have crossed the threshold of death and returned with the stunning memory of a world beyond this one where the soul reviewed its agreements before incarnating. Those who have returned from near-death experiences describe, with extraordinary consistency, a place of light, a presence, a review not of judgment, but of understanding. A space in which the soul sees its chosen path laid out before it, not as a punishment or a reward, but as a curriculum. A sacred, specific, intentional curriculum designed to bring the soul into contact with the precise experiences it needs in order to evolve, to expand, to fulfill the purpose it came here to embody. And the curriculum is not gentle in all of its chapters. The soul, in that space of infinite wisdom and clarity, chooses its challenges, not because suffering is desirable, but because the soul understands, from its position of expanded awareness, that certain depths of wisdom cannot be reached through comfort alone, that certain qualities of the spirit, resilience, compassion, sovereignty, surrender, can only be forged in the fire of genuine difficulty. This is the architecture of the soul contract. It is not a document that limits you. It is a map that was drawn with love, a love so vast and so intelligent that it trusted the soul enough to allow it to face exactly what it needed to face in order to become who it was always meant to be. Think about the chapters of your own life that broke you, the losses that reshaped you, the relationships that unraveled you, the moments when you stood in the ruins of something you had built and could not imagine how you would go on. Those chapters were not mistakes. They were not punishments. They were coordinates, precise, intentional coordinates, embedded in your soul's contract before you ever arrived here. Points on the map that the soul, in its infinite wisdom, identified as necessary waypoints on the journey toward something it could not reach any other way. The universe does not make errors. Every thread of your experience has been woven with intention. Every moment of darkness has been calculated not to break you, but to open you, to crack the shell of the person you thought you had to be, so that the soul you actually are could emerge with room to breathe. And once you accept that your life was contracted with precision and love, the question is no longer, why is this happening to me? The question becomes, what am I being asked to discover here? That shift, from victim of circumstance to participant in a sacred agreement, changes everything. It changes the way you receive your pain, the way you understand the people who hurt you, the doors that closed, the seasons that felt like they would never end. And it changes the way you understand that number you keep seeing. Because 1111 is a reminder, personalized, timed, and delivered with extraordinary precision, from the same intelligence that designed your contract. The contract was signed before your memory began, but the signs have been reminding you of it ever since. Why 1111 is a gateway, not a greeting. Most people, when they first encounter the idea of repeating numerical sequences, approach them the way they approach a fortune cookie. Something mildly pleasant, something that feels good for a moment, and then dissolves into the background of a busy day. A greeting from the universe, warm, vague, and ultimately without depth. But 1111 is not a greeting. It is a gateway. To understand what that means, you need to look at the number itself, not through the lens of modern pop spirituality, but through the lens of ancient numerological wisdom, which understood numbers not as symbols of quantity, but as living frequencies. Vibrational realities, languages through which the fabric of existence communicates with those who have eyes trained enough to see. The number 11 is what ancient numerological traditions call a master number. It is not reduced to a single digit the way other numbers are, because its power and its meaning exist precisely in its duality, in the tension it holds between two identical forces standing side by side. The number 1 is the frequency of the individual, the self, the point of origin. When 1 stands beside 1, it does not simply double in value. It opens a channel, a column of light between two pillars, a bridge between the world of matter and the world of spirit. In the ancient Hermetic tradition, the body of wisdom preserved across millennia in the teachings attributed to Hermes Trismegistus, the number 11 carries the resonance of what lies beyond the known. It is associated with illumination, with the threshold between dimensions, with the precise point at which the human mind becomes still enough to receive what the soul already knows. It is the number of the mystic, the seer, the one who walks between worlds. And when 11 doubles itself, when it becomes 1111, it is not simply a louder version of the same message. It is an amplification that creates something entirely new. 4 ones, 2 pillars of 11 standing beside each other. A gateway so precise in its geometry that the ancient builders of sacred temples encoded it into their architecture. The alignment of light through a doorway at a specific moment, illuminating what was otherwise hidden. 1111 is that moment, that specific, repeating, unmistakable moment when a portal opens between the ordinary world you are living in and the deeper reality of your soul's journey. A moment when the veil between the visible and the invisible becomes thinner. When the frequency of your awareness briefly aligns with the frequency of the universe's design. When the noise of daily life falls away just enough for something ancient and knowing to slip through and touch you where you are most awake. This is why you feel it when you see it. Your soul, which operates at a frequency far beyond the rational mind, recognizes the signal, recognizes the gateway, knows, in a way that bypasses all argument and all doubt, that it is being spoken to by the same intelligence that designed its contract. Every time you see this sequence, the universe is not simply saying hello. It is confirming that you are in motion, that the contract is active, that the path you are on, even if it feels unclear, even if it looks nothing like what you imagined, is the right one, the one that was chosen, the one that is leading you, with absolute precision, toward the version of yourself that the soul agreed to become. The Hermetic principle of vibration states that everything moves, everything vibrates, and the difference between one form of existence and another is simply the rate at which it vibrates. The moment you see 1111 and feel that pull is the moment your personal vibration is harmonizing with the frequency of your soul's highest agreement. It is the universe pressing a tuning fork against the wall of your awareness, inviting you to remember the note you were born to carry. If you are seeing 1111 frequently right now, it is not a sign that things are about to get easier. It is a sign that you are in the midst of something important, something chosen. The gateway is open, and you are already walking through it. The language the universe speaks when words fail. There is a language older than any spoken word, older than any written alphabet, older than any religious text or philosophical tradition that human civilization has ever produced. It is the language the universe has been speaking since before the first star ignited, a language made not of syllables and syntax, but of signs, symbols, patterns, and the impossible precision of meaningful coincidence. Carl Jung spent decades attempting to name and understand this language. He arrived at a word that has since entered the vocabulary of both psychology and spirituality. He called it synchronicity. Jung defined synchronicity not as a simple coincidence, but as a meaningful coincidence, a moment in which an external event in the world and an internal state of the soul align with a precision that cannot be explained by ordinary chains of cause and effect. A moment in which the universe, as if responding to the specific frequency of the soul's experience, arranges the outer world to reflect, confirm, or redirect the inner one. These moments are not rare. They are happening constantly in every life, every day. In the song that plays at exactly the moment you needed to hear its words. In the stranger whose passing comment reaches directly into the center of a question you have been carrying for weeks. In the book that falls open to the exact page that answers what your mind has been circling in silence. In the number you see at the precise moment. Your doubt is loudest, and your faith most in need of confirmation. The question is not whether the universe is speaking. The question is whether you have developed enough stillness to hear it, whether you have released enough of the rational mind's insistence on logical explanation to allow the symbolic, living intelligence of the cosmos to make contact with you in the ways it actually communicates. Not through argument, but through resonance. Not through proof, but through recognition. The ancient Hermetic principle of correspondence teaches that what exists above is mirrored below, that the patterns of the cosmos are replicated in the patterns of the human soul, and that by learning to read one, you learn to read the other. This is not metaphor. This is a description of the actual structure of reality as understood by those ancient enough to have studied it before the modern mind decided that mystery was a problem to be solved rather than a language to be learned. When you see 11:11 on a clock, the universe is not being vague. It is being extraordinarily specific. It is choosing a language it knows you can perceive and embedding within that pattern a message calibrated to your exact soul frequency, your exact position within your contract, your exact moment of need. It does not broadcast a general signal to everyone simultaneously. It speaks to each soul in the dialect that soul is most prepared to receive. You have not been imagining it. You have not been manufacturing meaning out of nothing. You have been translating. You have been, perhaps without knowing it, in active dialogue with an intelligence that has been attempting to communicate with you for your entire life. That pause you feel when you see 11:11, that stillness, that involuntary attention, that is not superstition. That is your soul answering the call. The universe does not give up. It simply finds increasingly precise ways to penetrate the noise of your daily consciousness and reach the part of you that already knows the truth. The conversation has always been happening. You are simply becoming more fluent in the language in which it is being held. The painful chapters were in the contract too. This is the part that most people find hardest to accept, not because it is difficult to understand, but because it asks something of the human heart that goes against every instinct of self-protection. It asks you to consider, truly consider, not just as a comforting idea, but as a lived spiritual truth, that the most painful chapters of your life were not mistakes, were not punishments, were not evidence of a universe that abandoned you. They were chosen, they were written, they were in the contract. Not just the manageable difficulties, the real ones, the losses that shattered your sense of what the world was, the betrayals that rewrote your understanding of who you could trust, the grief that settled into your body so deeply it changed the way you breathed, the seasons of your life so dark that the concept of light felt like a language from another world. Those, specifically, those. The wisdom of the ancient Stoics understood something that modern spiritual culture often softens to the point of losing, that the challenges of existence are not obstacles to the good life. They are the conditions through which the deepest qualities of the soul are forged, not taught, not learned intellectually, forged in the way that metal is forged, through heat, through pressure, through the application of a force that reshapes what is there into something that could not have been made any other way. What the wisdom of soul contracts adds to that understanding is something even more intimate. It is not simply that difficulty builds character in some general sense. It is that your specific difficulties, the ones that arrived in your life with the particular shape and timing that they did, were selected by your soul in advance, because your soul understood, from the expanded perspective of the space before birth, that those specific experiences were the precise key to unlocking what your specific incarnation was designed to embody. Your grief opened something in you that joy could not reach. Your failure dismantled something in you that success would have only reinforced. Your betrayal broke open a version of trust that was built on the wrong foundation, so that something more real could be constructed in its place. Your season of darkness forced you into a relationship with your own depths that comfort would have allowed you to avoid indefinitely. The universe does not waste pain, not a moment of it. Every particle of suffering in your life has been metabolized, is being metabolized, into the specific wisdom, the specific compassion, the specific quality of presence that your soul came here to develop, and eventually, to offer. The contract does not require you to be grateful for your wounds before you have understood what they were for. It simply asks you, when you are ready, to look at the full arc of your story and consider the possibility that nothing was wasted, that the very things that broke you were also the things that made you capable of the depth of understanding and the quality of love that you now carry. And when you can hold that possibility, not as a certainty, but as an opening, the signs that have been appearing throughout your life take on an entirely different quality. They become confirmations from the same intelligence that was present when the contract was written, present at every point where the contract was lived, and is present now, reminding you that you have never walked through fire alone. The people who broke you were also sent. There is a particular quality of pain that belongs specifically to human betrayal. Not the pain of illness, not the pain of loss, not even the pain of failure, but the pain of being hurt by someone you loved, someone you trusted, someone whose presence in your life felt at the time like one of the most significant things that had ever happened to you. If you have known this pain, and most souls drawn to this kind of understanding have known it deeply, then you know that it is not just the wound itself that is difficult to carry. It is the question underneath the wound, the one that refuses to be answered by logic or time. Why did this person come into my life only to become the source of my greatest pain? What this understanding of soul contracts offers to that question is not the comfort of a simple answer, but something more powerful, a complete reframing of the question itself. Because the people who have caused you the most pain were not in your life by accident. They were, in the deepest and most sacred sense of the word, sent. Contracted, just as you were, agreed upon in that space before incarnation, where the soul sees the full architecture of what it needs to become, and recognizes the specific other souls whose particular qualities, whose particular edges, whose particular wounds, will create exactly the conditions required for the contracted growth to occur. This is not a consoling fantasy. It is a metaphysically serious idea with roots in wisdom traditions as ancient and diverse as human spiritual inquiry itself. The concept of karmic relationships, souls who return to each other across multiple incarnations to complete what was left unfinished, is found in the Hindu and Buddhist traditions, in certain streams of Jewish mysticism, in the esoteric teachings of Christianity, and in the testimony of those who have returned from near-death experiences describing the recognition of souls they have known before. Even within a single lifetime, it is observable. The people who provoke your deepest reactions are almost always touching something unresolved within you. The people who triggered your greatest fears were precisely calibrated, not by malicious intent, but by soul agreement, to bring those fears to the surface where they could finally be faced and released. The people who betrayed your trust did not destroy your capacity for trust. They destroyed a version of trust that was built on something insufficient, and in doing so created the conditions for something more genuine to emerge. This does not excuse the harm that was done. What it offers is the possibility of a perspective shift so profound that it changes your relationship not just with the past, but with the people who populated it, into something that arrives slowly, with honesty, after the full weight of the experience has been felt. Understanding. The understanding that the person who broke your heart was also a soul on a contracted path, that their own wounds, the ones they carried before they ever met you, were what made them capable of wounding you in the precise way they did, that you were, for each other, exactly what the contract required, a mirror, a catalyst, a teacher who taught not through kindness, but through the kind of friction that only genuine human contact can create. The people who broke you were also sent. They came because the contract required them. And what remains, after the breaking, after the leaving, what remains is you. More open than before. More real than before. More capable of the depth of connection that your soul came here to experience and to give. When you almost gave up, the moment the contract activated, there is a specific kind of darkness that is unlike any other. It is not the ordinary darkness of a bad day or a difficult season. It is the darkness that arrives when you have tried everything you know how to try, when you have hoped until hope exhausted itself, when you have held on through so many storms that the very idea of holding on becomes something you no longer have the strength to imagine. It is the darkness in which the future begins to feel like something that may simply not include you. If you have stood in that darkness, and if you are here, there is a strong possibility that you have, then you know what it feels like to be at the absolute limit of the self. And you know, because you are here, that something happened in that darkness. Something shifted. Something arrived. A sign, a person, a dream, a thought that appeared from nowhere and changed the direction of everything. At the precise moment when it was most needed and least expected. That moment was not a coincidence. That turning point in the darkest chapter of your story was the most deliberate, most carefully timed event in the entire arc of your soul contract. In the wisdom of many ancient traditions, there is an understanding that the soul's most profound activations do not happen at the peaks of life. They happen in the valleys. They happen precisely when the constructed identity, the version of the self built from conditioning, from fear, from the accumulated armor of self-protection, has been so thoroughly dismantled by circumstance that there is nothing left to protect, nothing left to perform. And in that nakedness, in that terrifying openness that follows the collapse of everything the self has been using to hold itself together, in that exact moment, the soul becomes available in a way that it simply cannot be when life is comfortable. The walls come down not because the soul chose to lower them, but because the circumstances of the contract applied exactly the right pressure at exactly the right moment to ensure that the walls could no longer stand. This is what the contract always knew would happen. This is what the soul understood was necessary, that at some point in the journey, the constructed self would need to be stripped away entirely, so that what lay beneath it could be reached. So that the soul's actual truth, its actual power, its actual capacity for the transformation it came here to embody, could finally make contact with the life it was living. The moment you almost gave up was the moment the contract activated at its deepest level. The universe does not apply maximum pressure to souls it has abandoned. It applies maximum pressure to souls that are ready, contracted to be ready, for the kind of breakthrough that only that level of pressure can produce. You are still here. You are listening to this. Whatever happened in that darkness, you came through it. And you are not the same person who entered it, because the contract never intended for you to emerge unchanged. It intended for you to emerge transformed, cracked open in the precise places where the light needed to enter, rebuilt on a foundation more real, more honest, and more aligned with the soul's actual truth than anything you had been standing on before. The number you keep seeing in the aftermath of those dark seasons is a confirmation from the same intelligence that was present in your darkest moment, saying not, "You survived," as if survival were the goal, but something far more precise, saying, "You arrived." This is what the contract was always building toward, the hidden intelligence behind repeated patterns. You have noticed them, perhaps not always consciously, but you have noticed them. The patterns, the cycles, the specific configurations of experience that seem to return, wearing different faces in different circumstances, but carrying the same essential quality, the same emotional texture, the same invitation to react in the same ways you have always reacted, the same invitation to choose differently that you have not always been able to accept, the same kind of relationship that ends the same way, the same dynamic at work that brings you to the same place of exhaustion, the same fear that surfaces at the same threshold of opportunity, the same test, arriving in a new disguise, asking the question your soul has not yet fully answered. Most people, when they recognize these patterns, feel shame, because repetition feels like failure, or confusion, because the pattern makes no logical sense. What the ancient Hermetic principle of correspondence and the wisdom of soul evolution together reveal is that neither shame nor confusion is the appropriate response. The appropriate response is attention, curiosity, the willingness to look at what keeps returning not as a malfunction of the self, but as an extraordinarily persistent message from the soul, one that has been trying to be heard for a long time, through a pattern that will continue to repeat until it finally is. The universe does not send the same lesson once. When the soul has identified a specific area of growth, a specific pattern of perception or reaction that must be transformed in order for the next chapter of the path to open, the universe will arrange the outer world, with remarkable patience and precision, to recreate the conditions of that lesson as many times as necessary until the soul is ready to meet it differently. This is not punishment. It is dedication. It is the universe's absolute commitment to the soul's contracted evolution, a commitment so total that it will not relent, because it knows what the soul agreed to master, and it knows that the mastery has not yet been achieved. The moment you stop asking, "Why does this keep happening to me?" and start asking, What is this pattern asking me to learn? The pattern begins to lose its power over you. Not all at once, not without effort. But the shift in question is the beginning of the shift in experience, because the soul cannot receive the lesson it is being asked to receive, while the mind is still insisting that the lesson itself is the problem. The law of cause and effect, as understood in both Hermetic philosophy and the Eastern concept of karma, teaches that every pattern of experience has a corresponding pattern of consciousness that is generating it. The frequency at which the soul is vibrating will continue to attract experiences that match that frequency until the frequency itself changes. And the frequency changes not through willpower, but through the genuine, deep, and ultimately liberating work of transformation that the pattern was designed, by the contract, to initiate. When the pattern breaks, when you finally meet the recurring situation with a genuinely different response, emerging from a genuinely transformed place within yourself, the universe recognizes the mastery. The cycle closes, and in the space where the pattern used to be, something new can begin. Something that the contract had always intended to deliver once this particular chapter of learning was complete. The pattern is not your enemy. It is the universe's most persistent teacher, wearing the most specific disguise your soul requires in order to learn what it came here to master. Time is not linear in the language of the soul. There is a particular form of anxiety that is almost universal among souls who are aware enough to have a sense of purpose, but not yet at peace enough to fully trust the timing of its unfolding. It is the anxiety of behind, the anxiety that looks at where life is, compares it to where it thought life would be by now, and finds in that gap a source of low, persistent, exhausting dread. You know this anxiety, the sense that the important things are taking too long, that the doors that should be opening are remaining closed, that the version of your life that feels true, that feels contracted, is visible on the horizon, but not arriving at the pace your very human impatience requires. What the soul's understanding of time reveals is that the anxiety of behind is built entirely on a false premise. The premise that time, as the soul experiences its journey, moves in the linear sequential way that clocks and calendars suggest it does. It does not. Those who have studied the mystical dimensions of consciousness, from the Sufi poets who wrote of time as the illusion of a dream, to the quantum physicists who have demonstrated that, at the subatomic level, time is neither fixed nor directional, to the souls who have returned from near-death experiences describing an existence where past, present, and future are simultaneously accessible, all arrive at the same understanding. Time, as the soul experiences it, is not a line. It is a field, a living, non-linear field of possibility, in which the soul's contracted moments of arrival are determined not by the ticking of a human clock, but by the precision of a cosmic readiness that the rational mind cannot fully perceive or control. What you have been experiencing as delay is not delay in any meaningful sense. It is active, necessary, and visible preparation, happening in the depths of your soul and in the arrangements of the outer world simultaneously, for the moment of arrival that the contract has always contained, but that could not manifest before the readiness was genuine. The universe is not slow. The universe is exact. What feels like a year of waiting from the perspective of your anxious mind is, from the perspective of the soul's contracted journey, exactly the right amount of time for the internal transformation required to receive what is coming. Every spiritual tradition that has grappled with this understanding has arrived at the same teaching. Trust, not blind trust, not passive resignation, but active, conscious, awake trust. The trust of a soul that understands it is within a designed journey, and that the designer of that journey has never miscalculated the timing of anything. The Stoics called this amor fati, the love of fate. Not the acceptance of fate as a compromise, but the love of it as the specific, exact, contracted unfolding of the soul's deepest truth. The Taoists called it wu wei, acting in alignment with the natural flow rather than in resistance to it, understanding that the flow itself is intelligence and that fighting it costs everything while flowing with it costs nothing. The number you keep seeing, arriving at moments when you need confirmation most, is the universe reminding you, you are not behind. You have never been behind. You are arriving at everything the contract contains in exactly the order it was designed, at exactly the moment it was always intended to arrive. The timing is not yours to control, but the trust is yours to choose. The frequencies you carry, why some souls see more signs than others. You may have noticed that when you mention 1111, or the signs or the synchronicities or the feeling that something larger is speaking through the ordinary details of your daily life, not everyone responds the way you expect. Some people understand immediately, their eyes lighting with recognition. Others look at you with polite but genuine confusion, as if you are describing a phenomenon that simply does not exist in their version of the world. This is not a difference of intelligence. It is a difference of frequency. The concept of vibrational attunement, understood across Hermetic philosophy, Vedic cosmology, and the modern study of energy and consciousness, holds that all forms of existence vibrate at specific frequencies, and that the capacity to perceive any given level of reality is directly related to whether the observer is vibrating at a frequency that allows that level of reality to be detected. Just as a radio receiver tuned to one frequency will only pick up transmissions at that frequency, the soul tuned to a certain level of awareness will only perceive the signals transmitting at the corresponding level. This is not hierarchy. This is not superiority. The souls who see more signs are not better than the souls who see fewer. They are simply tuned differently, and the tuning itself is part of the contract. Before incarnating, certain souls agree to carry a frequency of awareness that makes them natural receivers of cosmic communication. These are, very often, the souls who have been through the most, who have been cracked open the most, who have been driven by the weight and precision of their contracted difficulties to seek meaning beyond what the surface of experience can offer, because the search for meaning is itself a frequency. The refusal to accept that life is random is itself a frequency. The capacity to feel in the body, the pull of something beyond the rational, that is a frequency the universe knows how to find. This is why the signs tend to intensify, not in periods of ease, but in periods of searching. The question itself raises the frequency. The authentic seeking opens a channel, and the universe, which has never stopped transmitting, responds to the open channel by filling it. If you are someone who sees 1111 with the regularity that brought you to this video, you are someone who has elevated your frequency of awareness to the point where the universe's most precise communications are available to you. This is not something to take lightly. It is, in the most honest understanding of what it means, a responsibility, because the souls who are contracted to receive must also be contracted to respond, to allow the awareness, the signs, the synchronicities, and the understanding they carry to change not just the inner experience of life but the way the soul moves through the world, relates to other souls, and participates in the larger cosmic design that is unfolding through every contracted life simultaneously. You see the signs because you were contracted to see them, and you were contracted to see them because the universe has something specific for you to understand, to embody, and eventually, to reflect back into the world from the particular position that only your soul, with its particular frequency, its particular wounds, and its particular gifts, can occupy. What happens when you stop fighting the contract? There is a moment, not a dramatic moment, not usually the kind that announces itself with clarity, in which something in the soul simply releases the argument, releases the resistance, releases the long, exhausting, entirely understandable insistence that life should be different from what it is, that the path should look different, that the timing should be different, that the losses should not have happened, that the self should be further along. The moment of release does not feel at first like victory. It feels like defeat, like the dropping of a weapon you have been carrying so long that its weight has become familiar, and the absence of its weight is more disorienting than the weight itself ever was. It feels often like grief, because what is being released is not just the resistance. It is the identity that was built around it. But this is the threshold of the most profound transformation available to a soul in human form, and it is written into the contract, not as an endpoint, as a beginning. The ancient Stoic tradition understood the radical, life-altering power of what the Stoics called the dichotomy of control, the recognition, applied not as a philosophical exercise but as a lived, embodied orientation toward reality, that there are things within the soul's power, perception, response, the choice of meaning, and things that are not. External circumstances, the behavior of others, the timing of events, the shape of what arrives. The contract does not ask the soul to be passive. It asks the soul to direct its enormous creative energy that, when misdirected into fighting what cannot be changed, creates only suffering, toward the one thing it has always been able to control, the perception it brings to experience, the meaning it constructs from circumstance, the quality of consciousness it chooses to inhabit in any given moment, regardless of what that moment contains. The law of surrender, as understood in mystical Christianity, in Sufi devotional practice, in the Taoist concept of Wu Wei, and in the teachings of nearly every wisdom tradition that has grappled with the relationship between the soul and the greater design, is not a law of giving up. It is a law of giving over, of placing the weight of the outcome in hands larger and wiser than those of the individual soul, while the soul focuses its full and sovereign attention on what it can actually do something about, the inner landscape of its own experience. When you stop fighting the contract, not in resignation but in genuine, awake, deeply intentional surrender, the universe accelerates, because the friction that has been consuming your energy is released, and that energy becomes available for what it was always meant to fuel: your actual transformation, your actual movement along the path, your actual arrival at the chapters of your contracted story that the resistance was holding at bay. This is what the sign of 1111 is reminding you of every time it appears at the moments when the resistance is highest. It is not telling you that everything will immediately become comfortable. It is telling you that the intelligence of the universe has not changed its mind, that the path is still exactly where it has always been, waiting not for your circumstances to change, but for your relationship to your circumstances to change. You were contracted for this, for the full experience of it, the resistance and the surrender, the darkness and the opening, the fighting and the release. All of it has always been leading here, to the moment when you stop fighting what you agreed to live, and begin, at last, to inhabit it fully. 1111 and the awakening of collective consciousness. For most of human history, the experience of spiritual awakening was understood as a solitary journey: the mystic in the desert, the monk in the monastery, the isolated soul who broke through the surface of ordinary perception into the vast and luminous territory beneath it, whose task was often simply to hold that awareness within a world not yet ready to receive it. Something is different now. If you have ever tried to explain the experience of 1111 to someone, the repeated signs, the synchronicities, the feeling that the universe is communicating through the patterns of your ordinary life, you may have expected skepticism. What you may have found instead with increasing frequency is recognition. People across cultures, across continents, across languages and backgrounds and belief systems, reporting the same experience, the same numbers, the same moments of inexplicable knowing, the same sensation of being part of something larger, something orchestrated, something moving through human consciousness on a scale that no individual soul is large enough to fully comprehend. This is not coincidence. It is, in the most precise and literal application of the word, synchronicity on a collective scale. The ancient wisdom of traditions as diverse as the Mayan calendar system, the Vedic concept of yugas, and the Hermetic understanding of cyclic time all contain within their architecture the teaching that human consciousness does not evolve in a smooth, continuous, upward line. It evolves in epochs, in great cycles of contraction and expansion, of forgetting and remembering, of collective sleep and collective awakening. And certain moments in the great cycle represent threshold points, moments of concentrated evolutionary possibility in which the frequencies of awakening become available to a far larger number of souls than any preceding era would have allowed. The period of history currently being lived is one of those threshold moments, a point of collective acceleration in which the veil between the contracted soul's awareness and its ordinary daily consciousness becomes thinner for a larger number of people simultaneously, a point at which the signs become accessible to souls who, in another era, might never have had the frequency required to receive them. This is why you are not alone in this experience. This is why the phenomenon of 1111 and the awakening of contracted souls is not a fringe occurrence affecting a small number of unusually sensitive individuals. It is a global signal, a collective knock at the door of human consciousness, delivered through the one language, the language of meaningful pattern, that transcends every cultural and linguistic barrier and speaks directly to what every human soul has in common, its connection to the intelligence that contracted it into being. The souls who are seeing 1111, who are recognizing the signs, who are arriving at the understanding of their contracts, these souls are threads in a collective awakening that the universe has been orchestrating across centuries. The timing of your individual awakening is not separate from the timing of the larger one. It is part of it, contracted to contribute to it in the specific, unrepeatable way that only your soul, with its specific history and frequency, can. You woke up not just for you. You woke up because the universe needed a soul at your frequency, in your position, with your particular understanding of what it means to have walked through darkness and found the signs on the other side, to be awake in this specific moment of the collective journey. Living as a contracted soul. Daily alignment with universal design. Understanding the contract is one thing. Living within it consciously is another. And the distance between those two things, between the intellectual grasp of a spiritual truth and its actual embodiment in the daily experience of being human, is where most of the real work of the soul's journey takes place. Because the contract does not exist only in the dramatic moments. It speaks quietly, continuously, with extraordinary patience, through the texture of every ordinary day, through the choices made in the morning before the mind is fully engaged, through the quality of attention brought to the most unremarkable interactions, through the inner posture carried into situations that feel too small to be spiritually significant, but are, in the architecture of the contract, precisely as significant as the ones that feel large. The ancient Stoics had a practice they called the morning review, a deliberate daily act of consciousness in which the soul took stock of its orientation before the day began, not as a performance of positivity, but as a sincere, grounded act of alignment, a moment of remembering who the soul was, what it was contracted to embody, and how it intended to meet the day from that place of remembrance rather than from the reactive, automatic momentum of habit and anxiety. Living as a contracted soul means developing a relationship with this kind of daily consciousness, not as an additional burden placed on an already full life, but as the most fundamental reorientation of what it means to be alive. The shift from moving through the day as a collection of tasks and reactions to moving through it as a soul in active, aware participation with the designed unfolding of its contracted path. This means learning to read the ordinary signs as fluently as the dramatic ones. The number that appears in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon when nothing in particular is happening is not less significant for the ordinariness of the moment. It is the universe confirming that the path is intact, not only in the extraordinary, but in the everyday. It means bringing the quality of attention developed through the awareness of synchronicities into the conversations, the decisions, the moments of creative impulse, and the moments of resistance that make up the texture of a day. Asking not only what do I want here, but what does this moment within the larger arc of my contracted journey seem to be asking of me? Not as a way of outsourcing every decision to an external cosmic authority, but as a way of aligning the soul's sovereign agency with the intelligence of the design it agreed to participate in. The law of correspondence teaches that as above, so below, that the macrocosm of the soul's contracted journey is reflected in the microcosm of the daily lived experience. The patience required in a small frustration is the same patience contracted to be developed through a great trial. The courage required to honor an inner knowing against external pressure is the same courage the contract has always been building. This is what it means to live in alignment, not a grand, dramatic, continuous spiritual performance, but a recurring, honest, imperfect, genuine practice of remembering, in the middle of the ordinary, in the middle of the difficult, in the middle of the achingly human, that you are a soul on a contracted path, moving through a design that was made with love at the precise pace it was always intended to travel, toward the version of yourself that the universe has never stopped believing in. The signs that come after. 1111. What the universe says next. The soul that has awakened to the language of 1111 does not arrive at a destination. It arrives at a beginning. Because the universe, once a channel of communication has been opened, once a soul has developed the awareness to receive a specific frequency of signal, does not stop transmitting. It expands, it deepens, it introduces new layers of the conversation, new frequencies of meaning, new configurations of symbol and synchronicity that correspond to the new depths the soul is now capable of receiving. The signs do not simplify as awareness grows. They elaborate. They become more precise, more personalized, more layered in their meaning. The cosmic dialogue that began with 1111 evolves into a full and living language, one that uses numbers, yes, but also animals, songs, phrases, faces, dreams, physical sensations, and the almost electrical recognition that occurs in the body when the soul encounters something it was contracted to encounter. In the numerological tradition that understands 1111 as a gateway, the sequences that tend to follow its initial activation carry their own precise meanings. The number 222 carries the frequency of trust, of alignment in relationship, of the confirmation that the soul is moving in the direction of its contracted partnerships, both human and divine. The number 333 carries the frequency of the ascended masters, of ancient wisdom traditions, of the reminder that the soul is not navigating its path alone, but is supported by intelligences it cannot fully see. The number 444 carries the frequency of foundation, of the confirmation that what is being built, even when the construction seems slow, is being built on ground that will hold. The number 5555 carries the frequency of contracted transformation, arriving at exactly the moment it was always intended to arrive. The number 777 carries the frequency of mystical alignment, of the soul operating in full resonance with its highest contracted purpose. The number 999 carries the frequency of completion, the closing of a cycle, the honoring of what has been learned, the sacred ending that makes room for the new beginning the contract has always contained. These are not arbitrary assignments of meaning. They are the specific frequencies at which the universe, in its living numerological language, has always communicated with souls developed enough to receive them. And the soul that has awakened to 1111 is a soul whose frequency of awareness is in the process of expanding, which means the full vocabulary of this language is becoming available in ways that were not possible before the gateway opened. The expansion of the vocabulary does not require you to become fluent overnight. It requires only the same quality that made you receptive to 1111 in the first place: attention, the willingness to notice, the capacity to be present enough to your life that when the extraordinary slips through, when the sign appears with its precise timing and its unmistakable quality of personal relevance, you are there to receive it. The dialogue is continuous, evolving, growing more intimate and more specific as the soul becomes more capable of sustaining that level of contact. And what began as a number on a clock becomes, over the arc of an awakened life, a full and living relationship with the intelligence that designed the contract. A relationship in which the soul and the universe move together through the unfolding of time with the quality of presence and trust that makes every moment, however ordinary it appears, a potential point of contact with the sacred. The signs after 1111 are the universe saying, "You heard me. Now let us go deeper. Now let us explore together the full language of the contract you agreed to live, and the full beauty of the life it was always leading you toward. You were always meant to receive this." There is something that needs to be said, directly and without softening, to the soul that has traveled the full length of this understanding and arrived at this moment. You were always meant to be here, not in the vague, generically comforting sense that everything happens for a reason. In the precise, contracted, intentionally designed sense that the soul you are, carrying the specific history you carry, shaped by the specific losses and the specific gifts and the specific seasons of darkness that have made you exactly who you are, was always going to arrive at this exact point of understanding, at this exact opening of awareness, at this exact moment in which the full weight of what the signs have been saying begins to settle, not just in the mind but in the body, in the chest, in the place behind the sternum where the soul knows things before the intellect catches up. This is not the end of the video. This is the beginning of a life. Because everything offered here, the understanding of the contract, the reframing of the pain, the recognition of the signs, the invitation to surrender the argument with what is, and begin to move in alignment with what the contract contains, none of it is meant to be held as information. It is meant to be lived as transformation. And transformation does not happen in the watching of a video, no matter how precisely it was designed to reach you at exactly this moment. It happens in the daily, recurring, honest, imperfect practice of choosing, again and again in the small moments and the large ones, to trust the intelligence that designed your path over the fear of your own mind. The peace you have been searching for is not in the resolution of your circumstances. It has never been there. It is not in the arrival of what you have been waiting for, the healing of what has been broken, or the return of what was lost. It is available right now in this moment, in the conscious, sovereign choice of the soul to recognize itself as exactly what it has always been. A contracted being, held within a design of extraordinary intelligence and extraordinary love, moving through an agreed journey whose every detail, including this one, was always meant. The soul's conscious choice to align with the universe's design is the most powerful act available to a human consciousness. More powerful than any external achievement, more transformative than any circumstance, because it changes not what is happening around you, but the quality of the awareness that receives it. And it is from that change in awareness, not from the change in circumstances, that the true, lasting, unshakable peace that the soul has been contracted to discover actually emerges. You did not find this video. It found you. And it found you because the universe, with its extraordinary patience and its absolute dedication to the contracted journey of every soul it has set in motion, arranged for it to arrive in your awareness at exactly the moment when you were ready, truly ready, perhaps more ready than you know, to receive what it carries. The number you keep seeing was never a coincidence. The signs that have followed you through the seasons of your life were never the products of a mind seeking comfort in an indifferent universe. They were coordinates, communications, confirmations of a contract written before your memory began, a contract whose full and luminous truth you have just moved one profound and irreversible step closer to living. The contract is real. The design is real. The love that built it is real. And the soul that you are, exactly as you are, at exactly this moment in your journey, is the most precise and most beautiful fulfillment of what was always agreed. You were always meant to receive this, and now that you have, nothing will ever be quite the same again.